So happy Father's Day. Whether you have a good dad joke or not, happy Fathers. If you don't, they're good to keep in a back pocket. Every once in a while, you do need them. I was thinking about father. I was thinking about growing up because we've been in this series. I think this is our fourth week, called Backyard Theology, where we're just looking at kind of the basics of what it means, like what God means, who God is, the things that He's called us to, in just a very basic way. Because oftentimes we get in our backyard and we just start thinking about things. We get out there and we look up at the stars at night, and you wonder who created all this? How could all of this be? And is there a God out there? And sometimes we can feel insignificant, and we think about the things that maybe are missing in our lives. I go in my backyard and I'm like, oh, I wish that the things about it were better and different, and I'd love to have a fire pit, and I'd love to have this, and I'd love to have that. And sometimes we feel like things are missing in our lives, and God says, wait, you have everything. I've designed you perfectly and with everything that you need. We're just waiting for like a spark, call it the Holy Spirit, to be ignited and fanned into flame. And so I thought, what better thing this morning to tie in dads to our backyard theology, because a lot of times dads are in the backyard. They're grilling, they're mowing, they're taking care of things, the things that God has entrusted him with. And as I was thinking about that, my mind shifted from backyard to driveway. And I started thinking about the things that my dad had taught me. I significantly remember. I remember him teaching me how to shave, which eventually I decided it's not worth it. I'm just going to stop doing that altogether. I remember him, we would watch cooking shows together and things that he would teach. He loves to cook, and I now love to cook. I went through a phase where I had no interest in cooking, but then got into in the last 10 years or so, and things that he taught me that I remembered. And then I remembered one specific moment where he taught me how to drive. And I don't know if you have a memory like that with your dad, or maybe you can just think back to how you learned how to drive. But I remember we didn't learn in the driveway. We drove to an empty parking lot in the family station wagon. And I remember some of the things that he specifically told me to do, like the way to turn the steering wheel, like to make a certain turn. Instead of like going all this way, like to use two hands, like where to hold the steering wheel and how to put it in gear and all of those things. And maybe you remember that as well. I specifically remember him in the front seat next to me and my mom in the back seat. And my dad was a nervous wreck the entire time. We were in a wide, big parking lot. And he was just certain that I was going to run into something in that parking lot. And I think at some point he made my mom come up front and he sat in the back. He was very, very nervous. Maybe you remember that. Maybe you've been the one in the seat. Maybe you have some older kids that you've had to teach how to drive, and you've been the nervous one. I know that day is coming in my life, not all that far away. But I do remember. I remember the moment where he had to turn over the keys to me and trust me pulling out of the driveway and saying, "You are on your own. Check the mirrors. Remember, don't get the gas pedal confused with the brake. Hands at 10 and 2." And off I went. Maybe you know that moment too, of sending the kids off in a moment. Now, I also have memories of having to call my dad and say, "Dad, I've wrecked the car." Right? Have you had those moments? Have you had to make the phone call? Have you received the phone call? I had to make that phone call more than once, and let me tell you, it is no fun calling your dad late at night to tell him that you've messed up and that you've wrecked his car. Sending them off. And maybe you feel two things at once that sometimes doesn't seem like they should go together. When you have to send your kid off, you're proud of them. You give just about anything to strap them back in the car seat, in the back seat for 5 more minutes. Because the whole point of all of it, of every driving lesson, of everything that you taught them, every white knuckle trip around the block was this is the exact moment where you're sending them out. You were getting them ready to pull away from you, to leave. That's a weird thought with our kids, to leave. So whether you're a dad or you're a mom or you're a grandparent, whoever it is that God has entrusted you with to teach and to guide and to pour into, all of it is building up to something. Because the same thing shows up in the Bible. Because long before anybody had a car in a driveway teaching their kids how to drive, there was a father who stood in his fishing boat and watched his 2 grown sons get out of the boat and walk away from him toward a man that they had just met. This man's name was Zebedee. And we're going to look at his story today. Before we do, I do want to, again, honor our dads first, the men who show up and the men who keep showing up in our lives again and again, the ones who are out there providing and trying their hardest, and a lot of you are out there doing it, and you didn't even have a good father to copy from. So we see you as a church, and we thank God for you. And I want you to know, if you're not a dad in the room today, this message, it reaches past just dads. It belongs to everybody that God has handed a child to raise. And so maybe if you're a mom and you're doing it on your own, this message is for you too. If you're a grandparent and you're raising a second round of kids that you didn't expect to, this is for you. If you're an aunt, if you're a guardian, if you're a leader who shows up every week for a kid and nobody else does, he doesn't have anybody else in their corner, today's message is for you. It's for you. And so if you would turn with me to Mark chapter 1. Mark chapter 1, verses 16 through 20 is going to be our main passage of Scripture today. Mark chapter 1, verses 16 through 20. This is Jesus at the very beginning of his ministry. And he's simply walking. He's simply walking alongside the water, and then something very significant happens. So Mark chapter 1, verses 16 through 20. It says this: As he passed alongside the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon and Andrew, Simon's brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. "Follow me," Jesus told them, "and I will make you fish for people." Immediately they left their nets and followed him. And going on a little farther, he saw James, the son of Zebedee, and his brother John in a boat, putting their nets in order. Immediately he called them, and they left their father Zebedee in the boat with the hired men and followed him. There's 3 things in this scene that speak straight into our homes, straight into your house, straight into whatever your situation is and the people that God, maybe the children that God has entrusted you with. Here's point number 1. You are known by who you raise. You are known by who you raise. Look at how the Bible introduces these 2 brothers that we're going to look at in verse 19. James, the son of Zebedee, and his brother John. Notice how their father's name is right there in the introduction. Because people don't have last names yet. And so they're known. They're known by whose name, essentially, their name is stapled to. And their name, Zebedee, stays stapled to James and John all through the gospel. Over and over. These 2 grown men get called the same thing. They get called the sons of Zebedee. The sons of Zebedee. And what do we know about this man named Zebedee? Well, I know a couple of things. I know that he doesn't ever preach a sermon. I know that I don't ever see him perform a miracle. He never says one recorded word in the Bible, the entire Bible. But here's what's cool. He shows up about a dozen times across the Gospels. And every single time, it's because of his boys. It's because of his sons. His name made it into the most read book of all time in human history on the strength of the 2 sons that he raised. And look at who his boys became. Not just followers of Jesus. James, he grew up to be one of the early church leaders. He was actually he was the first of the 12 disciples to be killed for the name of Jesus. You can read it in Acts chapter 12. John grew up and wrote 5 books, the New Testament that you're holding right now. He wrote the Gospel of John, he wrote 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, and he wrote the book of Revelation. 2,000 years later, this whole room, our church, churches all across the world, are still reading the words not just of John, but of Zebedee's son. And Zebedee himself, who is he? He's a fisherman in a boat. That's the entirety of the picture that we get of Zebedee. And he's in the Bible for one reason. He raised 2 boys, and he raised them well. You see, Zebedee's whole legacy was his 2 boys. Your legacy is in your house right now, is in your home, is in your reach of who God has entrusted you with, because your name is on your kids too. Everything you pour into them, they're going to carry out your front door as they leave and into the world with your name attached to it. And so, the way that you treat, when you go out to eat with your family, the way that you treat a waiter, the server on a bad day, the way you talk about people the second that they leave the room, what you reach for when the week falls apart on you, what you do when you are just dead sure that nobody is watching, except somebody small always is. They're soaking up all of it, and they're going to carry a version of it out into their own lives, one day into their own marriages, into their own kids one day. And your name is going to be on it the whole time. So what is riding on your name today? I think every kid goes through a phase where they don't really like their parents. Maybe they're embarrassed by their parents. You ever get embarrassed by your parents? I remember getting embarrassed by my parents, especially my dad, a lot as a kid growing up. And there were moments where I would sneak off because he was doing something embarrassing. I remember he loved to get his cars washed. And there was a car wash in Springfield where I grew up called Auto Magic. And we would go to Auto Magic. It felt like every Saturday to get the car washed. And it was one of those things where he would be out there with the attendants, like showing them every spot that they'd missed and like making them redo it. And my sister and I would just be like off in the corner, like embarrassed by him. But I couldn't ever disown my dad because I look exactly like my dad. So not only did I have the last name, but I had like his looks. So I could never quite escape my dad. What is riding on your name, on who you are, on what your house is? Because Zebedee was raising a legacy with his 2 boys. And yours is in your house right now. You are known by who you raise. Here's our second point today. The goal was never the boat. The goal was never the boat. Think about what Zebedee wanted for his boys before Jesus ever showed up. We can see it. We can see it in the story. We can see it in the nets that they're holding. He was teaching them the family trade, right? Look back at verse 20 to see it. Zebedee, he's running a real operation here. He had a boat. He had a business. He even had hired men working for him. There's no mystery here about what the plan was for Zebedee and his 2 boys. Those 2 boys were going to learn the trade and take over the boat and carry the family name out onto that water for a whole nother family, a whole nother generation. That was the plan. And that's a good plan, right? There's nothing wrong with that plan. Oftentimes we have plans for our kids, right? We have plans to see them do something. Maybe to see them carry on the family business, to grow up and be doctors and lawyers and all of those things that we see as like high reach. We want the very, very best for them. Zebedee wasn't even reaching all that high. Just, I want them to be fishermen. I want them to work with me. I want to one day hand this over to them. And then Jesus walked up the beach and called them somewhere that Zebedee never had on his map for their lives. You see, Zebedee was raising fishermen. Jesus had a whole other idea. Jesus wanted to raise up apostles, disciples. And you see right there in that, there's a trap in there, it feels like. And it's the easiest one in the world for a Christian parent to walk straight into, because we start raising our kids for our plans, our dreams, our name, our boat. We want them to turn out like us. We want them to believe what we believe, partly because it's true, but partly because it's ours. We want them to take over what we built and keep it going. And friends, none of that is evil. It's just the aim is a little bit off, because the goal of a Christian parent is much bigger than a kid who just keeps the boat or the business running. It's bigger than a kid who takes on a career that you have picked out for them, or chases your dream, or carries on your exact version of things. The goal is a kid. The goal as parents is to raise children who follow Jesus. Even when Jesus calls them somewhere that we never had planned. Even when Jesus calls them somewhere you never would have picked out for them in 100 years. Even out of the very boat you spent your whole life building for them. Now here's the trap in that, because it starts out small usually. It starts out small. You pick up the Sunday hours because the money's real and the bills don't wait, and church becomes a thing that you make when you're not too worn out to get there. You stay on them about getting a job and helping out around the house harder than you have ever once stayed on them about following Jesus. You see, nobody decides to do this. You just look up one day and realize your kid has seen you lose it over their smart mouth, or lose it over a past due bill more times than they can count, and they've never once seen you that serious and that animated and that worked up about Jesus. Are you raising your children to follow your plans or to follow Jesus? Because one day those two roads might split, and you want to already know which one you have been walking them down. You have been showing them the way. It's never about the boat. Zebedee didn't know that yet. It was never about the boat. He was just investing in them, raising them up, hopefully into good men, into solid men. Which leads us to point 3. Your kids belong to God first. The third thing changes how we take care of everything else. Those boys were never Zebedee's property. They were entrusted to him. God handed Zebedee 2 sons for a stretch of years and gave him a job to do with them. Every kid, his 2 kids and however many else were in the boat, were just on loan from heaven to Zebedee. And the same is true in your house, who God has entrusted you with. They were made by God, they belong to God, and he has trusted you with them for a little while, and he's handed you an assignment. And that assignment's for every one of you, whether you're a dad or you're a mom or you're a grandparent, you're raising the second round, or a house with both parents under one roof. It comes down to 3 things. 3 things that we are meant to do as ones that God has entrusted kids with. To love them, provide for them, be the example. And every way we do each one of them is meant to point them to the same person. So let's talk about those 3 things. Love them. Love them. Where do you even get the kind of love that keeps showing up after your kid has hurt you? After your kid's embarrassed you, ignored you, slammed a door in your face? Maybe for the 4th time this month, maybe for the 4th time this week. How do I love them and love them well? We can only get that kind of love from God. Look at 1 John chapter 4:19. 1 John chapter 4:19 says this: we love because he first loved us. You see, the kind of love that we're meant to display, the kind of love starts with God and it flows down to our kids. You love them like that because I know that God has loved me first. And that same love, that same sacrificial love, That same love carried Jesus all the way to a cross for people who had done nothing to earn it. Romans 5:8 says, "But God proves his own love for us, in that while we were still yet sinners, Christ died for us." And parents, this has to be the definition of love in your home. It's love that moves first. Love that gives everything for someone who deep down has not earned it at all. So when you love your kids on the days that it feels like they are impossible to love today, that love is coming from somewhere very real. It came down to you from Jesus, and you are now passing it on to them. So to be the kind of parents that we're supposed to be, that God has called us to be, we start by loving them, and we're called to provide for them. Providing is the easy one to picture. It's the roof over their heads, the groceries, the times, where it feels like they're eating you out of house and home. It's keeping the lights on, the shoes that fit this month and they're going to grow out of next month. Jesus himself talked about a parent providing. Matthew chapter 7, he says, "Who among you, if his son asks him for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a snake? If you then, who are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good things to those who ask him?" So you see, every time you provide for your kid, you are showing them a small picture of a much bigger Father. You hand your child a plate of food, and whether you mean to or not, you are pointing them to a Father in heaven who gives good things to his children. Even in those moments where you give the plate of food and they say, "I don't like that." You guys ever have that? How you respond to that moment even is a way to point them back to God. And the single greatest thing that the Father ever gave went way past bread. Romans 8:32 says, "He did not even spare his own son, but gave him up for us all. How will he not also, with him, grant us everything?" The Father's number one provision for your kids was Jesus. So provide. Keep the lights on. Keep the fridge full. Work the job or the two jobs. The most important thing you will ever hand your children is Jesus himself. Put in front of them over and over until they know exactly where to go when the spiritual bread runs out. So we're to love them. We're to provide for them. We're to be the example for them. You see, this is the one that they actually inherit, because kids copy what they watch a long time before they obey what they're told. The Apostle Paul, put the standard about as high as it can go. 1 Corinthians 11:1, the Apostle Paul says, "Imitate me as I also imitate Christ." You see, that's the only kind of example worth being. The Apostle Paul, his whole standard is copy me as far as I am copying Christ. So what we're called to do as parents, as Christians, is to follow Jesus out loud, right where your kids can see it. And when they copy you, they're not really going to be copying you, they're going to be copying him. Listen, there's going to be times you're not going to pull it off perfectly. You don't always have to. The point is that they grow up watching you chase Jesus in real life, which means on the good days where it's really easy to chase Jesus, where you got the blessing, where you got the bonus at work, where good things are happening. It's probably even more important that they see you chase Jesus on the really bad days. God told his people to make that a daily thing. Deuteronomy 6 and 7. "These words that I am giving you today are to be in your heart. Repeat them to your children. Talk about them when you sit in your house and when you walk along the road and when you lie down and when you get up." That paints a picture of the entire day, right? In the kitchen, in the car, at bedtime, first thing in the morning. They get to watch you follow Jesus on just the most basic, ordinary day of your life. Love them, provide for them, and be the example for them. one thing holds all three of these together. You set the tone of your home. Whatever you build your week around, that is what your kids grow up believing life is actually about. Make Jesus that thing, and the home can become what God has built it to be. Leave him out of it, and you'll see the home begin to fall apart and fall short. No matter how good everything else looks from the street. You can have the prettiest house in town. You can have the best looking yard. Everything can look perfect on the outside. But if Jesus is not everything that's going on the inside, the family's not everything that it's supposed to be. Because your kids are not just listening to what you say about Jesus. They are watching where you actually, where you spend yourself. They're watching what gets you out of bed and what you grab to feel better and what you guard on the calendar like your life depends on it. And whatever they catch you treating like the most important thing in the world, that is what they'll grow up to be reaching for too. Your kids will worship what they watch you worship. Friends, our kids, they belong to God first. And the best thing that you will ever do with them is point them back to the one that they came from. So let's go back to the boat, kind of finish this story. Because this isn't just found in Mark. It's found throughout the Gospels. And Matthew. Matthew tells it too, and he gives us the line that ends it for us. Matthew chapter 4, verse 22. It says, immediately, they left the boat and their father and followed him. Now, look at what that interaction, that day cost Zebedee. His two sons walked off the family business right in front of his eyes. They put down the nets he taught them to throw out, and they followed this traveling teacher on down the shoreline. On any other day, a father watching both of his boys quit the boat, quit the family business in the same hour, and walk off with this stranger would be seen as a complete catastrophe. The plan's gone. It's out the window. I'm sure he went home and told his wife, "You're not going to believe what our boys did today." But that morning that James and John, Zebedee's sons, that day that they got out of the boat and left, was the entire job paying off. Zebedee raised two boys who, the second Jesus called their names, immediately got up and went. Raise them so that when Jesus calls, they're pretty much already climbing out the boat. Friends, that's the win for us as parents, as dads. That's the finish line for every parent in this room. You raise them and you love them with a love that came from Jesus, and you provide for them, and you keep pointing them to the Father who's given them to you. You set the tone and you keep Jesus at the front, and then you pray that on the day that his voice finally comes for them, they're already on their feet and ready to go. And to the young people in here, maybe you all are sitting there right now, and the boat that you came up in was never what it should have been. Maybe there was no Zebedee in your story at all. Jesus is still walking up beaches, calling out to kids, to teenagers who never even had a father in the boat. He calls us by name. He might be calling you right now, exactly as you are. Friends, oftentimes, the reason it can feel so hard to give over the keys to them and watch them back out the driveway is because we love them. And that's a good sign. It means you did something right. But the reason you let them pull away at all is that getting them ready to go was the assignment given to you from the very first day. We're raising them up to one day send them off. You raise them to driveway. You're made to let them go. So answer this one honestly. Your kids already know what you love most. They've been watching your boat their whole lives. If somebody pulled one of your children aside today and asked them what their mom or their dad puts first, what would they say? Not what you wish they would say. What would they actually say? If the honest answer is Jesus, keep doing what you're doing. Stay in it. It's working, even on the days, the weeks that it doesn't feel like it. But if the honest answer is something else, the job, your phone, the next thing, anything sitting in the seat where Jesus belongs, then hear this as grace. You have this week. You can change the tone of your home starting today. You're not too late. You're not too far gone. And the same Jesus who called those boys out of the boat is standing on the shore for you too. Jesus is still calling people out of the boats. The only question is, will we go? Were you raised to go? Maybe not. But maybe he's working on your heart today. And you know it's time to get out of the boat and it's time to follow him. Denise, if you would come in our time of response. Friends, if you would stand with me. If you would, for just a moment, bow your heads and close your eyes. This time of response is just that, because we believe as a church that we can never experience God. We can never meet with God. And his expectation is just that we stay the same. Because our relationship with him is built around transformation. He always desires us to have hearts that are willing to let him transform us closer and closer into who he desires us to be, who he created us to be. So what is it that he's revealed to you today, spoken to you today, called out to you? Maybe he is calling you out of the boat. Maybe he's called you by name today. He says, come and follow me. And maybe that brings something to your heart, to your mind, a hesitation that says, how can I leave all this behind? He called James and John to leave a lot behind. But he said, what I'll do in place of that, you can't even fathom right now. He called them out of the boats to become fishers of men, to be apostles, to be ones who took the good news of Jesus to the world. Friends, he can take whatever you feel like you might be leaving behind. Again, what the enemy is meant for evil and is playing games with you in your mind and your heart right now. And say, watch me take your story and turn it into something that you can't even fathom right now. The plans that I have for you. But you got to get out of the boat. You can't stay in the boat any longer. It's time to go. It's time to come and follow me. Maybe that means you handing your life over to him for the first time. Maybe that means coming back to him, rededicating your life to him. Maybe it means saying, God, I am ready for what's next. I'm ready to jump out of the boat. I'm scared. I'm nervous, but I'm going to take that step of faith. I'm going to say yes to you today. That might be as a parent, to lead your family as Jesus wants you to lead them. Father, this morning, whatever it is that you've spoken to us, each one, because, Lord, you see us as a whole, as a body of believers, of people in this room, but, Lord, you're also able to speak to us as individuals, as people, as your creation. So, Father, what have you spoken to us? What have you revealed to us? What have you called out to us from the shore to where we're sitting in the boat? What's that step that we need to take? Lord, wherever each one of us is at today, I pray that you would give us what we need over these next few moments: strength, courage, hope, a greater measure of faith to say yes to you. Friends, if saying yes to him today means that you need to come down and pray, to do battle, then I invite you to come and we'll pray. We'll go to God, a Father who loves us, who desires us to seek after him. So if I can join you in that, I invite you to come and we'll pray. As Denise plays and sings, just don't miss the moment. Don't miss what God is calling out to you to do today.